right,
Yeah.
Anthony, thanks. So thank you all for joining again on the Farm Force monthly webinar that we do. We definitely appreciate our returning webinar attendees that come every month, and anybody that's new to this, thanks for joining for the first time. We do these once a month. They're 30 to 45 minutes, and Anthony, because it was great content, I come up with some horrible jokes. So we do work well together. I hope you enjoy what we're going to present you. We have a chat on the side that's been very active that our VP of Marketing, Hannah, got going for us. It's been a good place for everybody to kind of network, kind of say where you're from and what you do, and ask questions during the presentation. Also, Hannah will be doing a poll, a couple polls during this about DSCSA, and if you're ready. And so please pay attention and look for that. Otherwise, again, thank you all for joining. I'm Justin, Vice President of Industry Sales at Farm Force, and I will kick it over to our webinar guru, Anthony Velasquez, who is our Chief Product. Thanks, Anthony.
Thank you, Justin. I don't know about guru, but I appreciate the warm introduction. Again, so grateful for all of you that join us every single month. We do these once a month, and a lot of work goes on, in the background to prepare for these. We want to make sure that we're doing really good topics. Like, we don't want to do things that everyone else is talking about. Before I go into telling you the story of how we arrived here to this particular topic, I think is a pretty interesting story. But my name is Anthony Velasquez. As Justin shared, I've been in the 340B industry for going on 15 years now. Feels like yesterday that I had my first 340B coordinator role at a health center. So I have the pleasure of serving as the Chief Product Officer here at PharmaForce, where we provide technology solutions to the pharmacy space and the 340B space, from third-party administration to PBM services to both large academic medical centers, all the way to grantees, Ryan White grantees, etc. So today's topic is an interesting one. And I say it's interesting because those of you that have been around the pharmacy space for at least the last decade and a half have heard DSCSA is coming. And every year we prepare for it. Every year, we're nervous about, okay, here it comes. We're going to have to adjust, and the industry is going to adjust, and then it gets delayed. So this has been a 13-year implementation. It has been broken up in several phases. And as we were preparing to choose a topic for this month, one of the things that I kept thinking was, man, this DSCSA is getting ready to go into effect, or at least the enforcement in November. I think November 27th was the date, November 27th, 2024. And I didn't see much conversation about it. I didn't see much talks in the industry at large about it. So I said, you know what, let's pick that topic and let's talk about it. And I finished preparing, doing the research for it, finished the slides, and then we got a new FDA exemption for DSCSA compliance. So anyways, here we are. It doesn't mean that you don't have to do absolutely anything. There's still the expectation that you are ready and to comply with DSCSA. So for the next 30, 40 minutes, I'm going to do a crash course on what it is, how it impacts you, and those of us that are in the 340B space, and what we can do to be better prepared for this. Before I go on, I just want to share my normal disclosure that everything that I am presenting today, that Justin and I are going to discuss on this webinar, does not reflect the official position or policies of PharmaForce or any affiliates. This presentation is provided for general information purposes only and does not constitute legal, financial, or professional advice. So everything that you hear on here, please do your own research, talk to your team before you implement anything in your 340B program. So I get that out of the way. All right. So what are we going to talk about today? We're going to talk about a few things. Let's talk about DSCSA and what is it. Just a quick reminder. DSCSA, it's a lot bigger than the 340B program. it affects a lot more things in the pharmacy supply chain process than the 340B program. But for those of us that are in the 340B program, that are TPAs, that are wholesalers, that are manufacturers, that are covered entities, that are contract pharmacies, there are implications to our industry that we ought to be well educated on it in order to be able to respond to it and be able to comply with the rules and regulations. We're going to talk about what the enforcement and implications are. We're going to talk about the impact of DSCSA to ESP submissions. So this is something that we have seen recently actually be an issue that has come up related to ESP submission and things like that. So we are going to talk about that. And then let's talk about 340B readiness and how you can be prepared. So that's the agenda for today. So let's go right into the topic. Those of you that have been, again, around the 340B pharmacy space have heard the Drug Supply Chain Services Act at some point in your journey. You have heard DSCSA, are you ready? What's going to happen? What's coming? Essentially, this is a federal law that was enacted in November 27, 2013, as part of the Drug Quality and Security Act. The primary goals, the main purposes, in order to just simplify all of this, is that it allows the supply chain to prevent counterfeit, stolen, or diverted drugs from entering the supply chain. It creates what we would say as a track and trace of every product that is on a shelf at a pharmacy, at a hospital, and at a distributor, et cetera, to, number one, enhance patient safety, again, prevent counterfeit or stolen products from entering the supply chain, make sure that we don't have products that are from other countries that are not approved by the United States, et cetera, entering the supply chain, and improve detection and response to drug shortages and other things. I've worked in a pharmacy. That's where I started, was working in a pharmacy. So, there were instances where you get things that you have to respond to, whether it's a damaged product that you would get a lot number, you have to go find it on your shelf, return it, and things like that. DSCSA makes that process easier as well. The key provisions and why it has taken so long to implement is that it requires this now traceability that turns into requiring unique identifiers for individual drug packages. It requires the traceability of those products as well. So it literally a brand new process of traceability had to be implemented all the way from the actual manufacturing of the product and labeling of the product, and that there's a way to track that product has moved on from that site to a distributor wholesaler, from the distributor wholesaler to a pharmacy or an inpatient pharmacy, or sort of its final location before being administered or dispensed to a patient. It allows for the verification of authenticity of a product, and also just compliance in general. So it creates a more secure and transparent pharmaceutical supply chain. It was a huge project, and that's why it's taken so long. This was supposed to all go into effect last year. So November of 2023, we were ready to respond to DSCSA. If you all remember and go back to a couple of months before then, we were all trying to figure out, okay, so everyone needs a GLN, and now the contract pharmacies need a GLN for their retail account. They need a GLN for the sold to account of the 340B account. And there was a lot of confusion about where do we get that? How do we get it? Some wholesalers and distributors were obtaining that on behalf of their pharmacies, some were not. So there was a little bit of confusion, a lot going on. Primarily, I would say the industry was not ready. The technology for tracing the product was not available at that time. So the FDA then added a stabilization period. So I'm turning on to my next slide so that you can kind of see, all of the history of DSCSA and through today. So again, The original November of last year, we were supposed to be in full enforcement of DSCSA. There were parts of the supply chain that were not ready for that. So there was a stabilization period that was added for another year until November 27th of 2024, the following month. So now we are we're not prepared for that. And so there are some exemptions that have been added and given more time for all of those systems to be in place. The good news is that just reporting of a conversation that we have had from wholesalers and distributors in the industry is that the traceability or the ability to find the tracing information for the big wholesalers is now available in those portals. So that has now been completed. It is available in those portals. If you have a account with one of the major 3 wholesalers, I'm only speaking for those. There are other wholesalers and distributors, but I'm only going to speak from the context of the main distributors, wholesalers in the industry that we are all aware of. Those are now providing the track and trace information on those products in their platforms, and that is what we have been informed. Us as a third-party administrator do not have access to that data, and I will share why that is troublesome and will cause issues in the future. So as we continue to understand the current implementation, there has been this exemption that has been provided for that has extended the timeline or the deadline for manufacturers, repackagers to May 27, 2025, wholesale distributors to August 27, 2025, large dispensers to November 27, 2025, and so forth and so forth. So as you can see here, if you're a covered entity or a health center, I don't mean to confuse you, there's really nothing for you to do. You are essentially in a waiting period until this all goes into effect. Although I think the FDA makes it clear that everyone should be operating as DSCSA ready as possible, that there are still an expectation that that there aren't counterfeit products in the supply chain, that pharmacies can respond to requests of product information and things like that. I think that expectation is there, but the enforcement of that is not until some of the newer deadline that has been provided. So I'm not going to go too much into the details of what those deadlines are, because a lot of our audience are covered entities, contract pharmacies, and that really doesn't apply to you in the context of having to do anything to prepare for that enforcement at this time. So now, all of that being said, right, all of that is currently working itself out. Again, I think the wholesalers are now in a position where they can all confidently say, we have implemented these systems in place to track the serialization numbers, to track all of the data that you need for as required by the DSCSA regulations. I think the manufacturers have now, for the most part, at least from my understanding of research that I've done, are now putting that identifier and that track and trace information on the labels of the products so that they can be properly scanned, they can be properly traced throughout the supply chain. But now we get to, again, the worries of when this fully is in effect and when this is fully enforced, what does that mean for those of us in the 340B space? What are the 340B implications? And the short story is that there are a lot of outstanding questions. There are a lot of things that we don't know yet. And I don't want to pretend like I have all the answers. I don't want to pretend like I know exactly how this will play out and what the enforcement will look like from the FDA on covered entities, especially as it relates to the contract pharmacy arrangements. But there are some real questions, and there's some questions around product possession and ownership. In a build to ship to model, the covered entity is being billed for that product. The covered entity is being charged for that product. However, the product is physically sitting on the shelf at a contract pharmacy. Often it could be a location that's not even in the same state as the covered entity. And there are some questions around what does that look like in terms of the FDA is now asking, questions about a specific product, or that specific product is in question, who is responsible, and how does all that work to respond to that request? So there are, I think, some questions about what does that look like in a replenishment model. I think it's easier in a in a entity owned or in-house pharmacy model where the covered entity, if you're a health system, you have your own pharmacies, you have more control of those pharmacies, and you're not in a, quote unquote replenishment model, then those questions may not apply to you. But in a contract pharmacy model, they continue to expand. For example, another thing that is a question that I think some entities have is what happens in a central distribution models. For example, you might have a contract pharmacy relationship with a large chain store in the 340B space. That chain store operates in a model where the product is delivered to a central distribution or a warehouse, and then that product can go to any store throughout the United States. So you have a contract pharmacy or an account number, and Justin, I'm explaining to you to see if it makes sense to you, but you have an account number with a Walmart store in Philadelphia. That product is shipped to a central distribution warehouse, in Missouri, right? And then the chain pharmacy decides, hey, actually, we have a need for that product in Texas, right? And so, but the covered entity paid for that product. So what does all that look like is one of the questions that I think those of us that are in this space have as we think about being prepared for DSCSA. Does that make sense? Does that resonate with you or with the questions that you've heard covered entities have?
Yeah, that makes sense. I think that kind of gives a little more color to what I've heard from the covered entities I'm speaking with. So yeah, that makes a lot of sense.
Yeah, because I don't know what that looks like. Because if you're a covered entity, you don't have any control over that or where that product ends. So those are one of the things that I'm thinking are, hey, this is yet to be determined. The third and kind of like the bigger one is product returns are such a sort of normal part of doing business in our 340B space, right? It is very common for a product to be shipped to a pharmacy and for the pharmacy to return that product, the product to be shipped to a hospital pharmacy, and the hospital pharmacy to return that product. It is very common for that product to be intermingled with products from other distributors. For example, if you have multiple wholesalers or distributors, and you might be buying the same or similar products from multiple distributors, then returns become more difficult in this DSCSA world. And that is one of the reasons why we as a third-party administrator have been encouraging our covered entities as much as possible to move to a credit-based replenishment. Again, as a way of preparing for this, that's going to be in one of the other slides coming up. But again, product returns are going to become very difficult. And what does that mean? Does that mean that product now just sits on shelves, expires more frequently? We have shortages happening, more frequently in our supply chain. So does this add to that shortage problem? So there's a lot of questions that will remain as that goes into place. So the thought behind it, the thinking behind it, I think it's good, and I think it's important. However, the implications of what will happen to day-to-day 340B programs is yet to be seen and yet to be determined. Another major implication to the 340B program, and those of you who are doing ESP submissions, so by ESP submissions, I mean you are voluntarily or forcibly submitting claims to the ESP platform for a manufacturer that has allowed you to obtain 340B pricing in exchange for claim submission. We saw recently with one of the manufacturers that all of a sudden they were requiring the serialization number as being part of that submission. And then we had a stir in our market of, okay, so you're asking for the serialization number. The covered entities naturally coming to the TPAs saying, hey, I need this serialization number because the manufacturer or the ESP platform is rejecting claims from that manufacturer. The TPAs are saying, well, hey, sorry, we don't obtain that information. That's not information that we receive from your distributor. That is something that's in your distributor. We as a TPA immediately went to the wholesalers and we said, hey, we want to help our entity solve this. Can we get this information so that we can put that with our ESP submission file so that our entities can submit their files? And we basically got a combination of answers of some are not prepared to share that with third-party administrators. Some are still reviewing whether that will be shared with third-party administrators. Some are not prepared to share it with any third-party platform yet. So there's a little bit of a difference in where covered entity, where the wholesalers, distributors are in that process of being prepared to share that electronic data. But that ultimately ends up having a real world implication. That is that you're not able to submit your claims for that manufacturer, that then you lose 340B pricing, and then now you are not able to obtain the 340B contract pharmacy savings or able to provide 340B pricing to your patients because of this. Now, my thinking is this a glimpse into what's to come post implementation of DSCSA? What says that now post November 27th of 2024 that manufacturers don't follow suit with what this one manufacturer did? So that's something that we have to keep an eye on how does all that unfold in this ESP submission world, where entities have to submit this data to their wholesaler, to their ESP platform in order to obtain 340B pricing. So I don't know what that looks like. I think entities will, in an imperfect world, I guess, entities will have to find a way to get the claims and then somehow tie the invoice on those claims and then go into the wholesaler portal and pull the serialization. I mean, any way that you look at it, it becomes a mess and it becomes more cumbersome, and more responsibility is placed on a covered entity to keep 340B pricing, while these things are just made more difficult. There's another hoop for you to jump through. There's another barrier in the way of covered entities getting 340B pricing. So it is unfortunate. It happened. I think that manufacturer reversed course, and it is now not requiring that. But again, this could be another thing. DSCSA could be used by the manufacturers as a way to then continue to restrict 340B pricing. So, yet to
Anthony,
be seen.
so you're really saying to summarize it. Can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you. Go ahead.
So to summarize it, you're saying that everyone on this call needs to go to their boss and get a raise, pretty much. More work to do, more money, right?
Sure, if that's what you got out of it, then yeah, sure, no problem. So that's what I said. No, I mean, I think, yeah, I think unfortunately, the truth is, if you're a covered entity, there are just all these ways where the world of supply chain and manufacturer restrictions just make it yet way more difficult to just run your 340B program, right? That's sort of my overall conclusion. And we have been on these webinars, we've been very, very, I think, transparent. We've been very, very forceful in saying that we do not support the manufacturer restrictions. We think that they do not align with the heart of the 340B program, and we look forward to some sort of, action from Congress to reverse that, so that covered entities can serve their patients. But in the meantime, there are all these ways where maintaining your 340B pricing in some of these instances are becoming more and more difficult, like requiring, serialization data information when there is no process for the entity to even do that. Like it's so cumbersome. It's not even possible to actually submit that in a clean way. So anyways, I digress, but that is my bigger point. Now, let's say that DSCSA enforcement finally comes, right? Whether it's next year or whenever that finally comes. Another major question, and I hate to have all these questions because I want to have answers, but the fact is that no one really knows what's going to happen. But if you are not DSCSA compliant, the enforcement is that pharmacies, distributors, manufacturers, etc., may be facing audits from the FDA or requests from the FDA about certain products, and you have to be able to respond to that. You have to respond in a certain time frame, etc. And then there's penalties, there's fines, there's penalties that are written into the FDA regs on not replying to, not being able to respond to that. Now, I don't think that's going to happen. I don't think covered entities are going to be unprepared. I think, covered entities are resilient, and we that are in the 340B market, we adjust, and then challenges come and things change, and we change and adapt. And I think that is, a core part of those of us in the 340B program, those of us that are in this field. Some of us were, did not just kind of stumbled upon 340B and we're here, but we are able to adapt to a lot of change. But the point is, what do these fines and penalties look like, and who do they apply to? And some of the literature that I've read and some of the things that I've read are that they would apply to a distributor, manufacturer, etc. But what if you are a covered entity and you're asked for information about a product and you're not able to produce that? What happens? Some of that stuff is yet to be determined. In business implications about inability to buy, sell, or trade pharmaceuticals, there are some instances where a pharmacy might trade drugs or switch products between other pharmacy stores and things like that. They would now need a process to track that drug moved from one store to another, and all sorts of things that will come with that. So let's go to the next slide. So the next slide is preparing for DSCSA is number one, the wholesalers understand the serialization data and process via your wholesaler and distributor network. So make sure, if you haven't done it already, that you are able to find in your wholesaler portal, whichever wholesaler that you utilize, the ability to pull this track and trace information. If you're a covered entity, if you are a contract pharmacy, make sure that you are able to access that data, make sure that you're able to understand how to read that data, so that, that is kind of like step one to being prepared. Again, what we have heard from the big three wholesalers is that data is now available through their online portals, and you should be able to access that. From your TPAs, understand what changes your TPA might have as a result of this. I can speak from a TPA perspective that the one change that we hope to have is to have access to the data so that we can share it with you, and that we can make that a lot easier of a flow, and that's together with invoicing data for you to really have that real time. There's a market actually of track and trace data companies. So there's now these companies that have popped up. They're not new. Some of them have been around for several years now, as they prepare for DSCSA, that you can pay a subscription to, and will provide that track and trace information. But what I'm hoping that the outcome is that in our 340B space, that is something that the TPAs are able to help with, because we have a lot of the invoicing data for those those TPAs that are managing your contract pharmacy networks, your split billing, etc. For your contract pharmacies, that you're educating and that you're working together with your pharmacies to discuss track and trace, to discuss returns, to put together some procedures of how you're going to handle a situation of a return or a request, that there's a framework in place for how to do that there's an open communication for how to do that. I'm thinking right now at the top of my head of, what do you do with these very big chain pharmacies that you might have a contract pharmacy relationship with, and you need to get some more information on track and trace information? What does that look like? I don't know. That's something that's yet to be seen. And the other point that I think is important is what I mentioned earlier, the credit-based replenishment. I still talk to a lot of entities that have no idea what this is, but credit-based replenishment is something that is provided to by some of the distributors to their covered entities on their accounts, that allows for a credit-based replenishment model of that. I have a video in our YouTube youtube.com/the pharma force, I believe, but you can go there, and I did an entire webinar on credit-based replenishment, what it means, how a lot of the concepts behind credit-based replenishment will help covered entities in preparation for handling DSCSA. So you might want to check that out, or ask us. We'll help you. I'd love to talk to you more about that. Policies and procedures. So making sure that you're incorporating that. This is new. There will be some work. If you have a 340B compliance committee, you can do that. Bring that up in your committee, put together some SOPs around it. I haven't seen a sample of any standard operating procedures around it, but perhaps Apex and some other agencies will come out with something like that. And be informed, be aware. This is probably something that we should have had in here, but be informed. I actually subscribed to the FDA's emailing list directly. So if you go to fda.gov, there's an emailing list that you can subscribe to know anything that they put out related to kind of next steps. Your wholesalers, distributors have a ton of good resources. Actually, some of the someone just posted the link on the FDA that actually takes you directly to the language on the waiver and exemptions. There's some of the wholesalers, some really good content on track and trace and how to prepare, what they're doing, etc. around that. So I encourage you to be in track or be aware of those. Those can be really, really good resources to understand how to prepare for this. I have not, for whatever reason, I have not seen a lot of recent, whether it's some of the bigger publications that usually we all monitor and are aware of what's going on in our space. I've not seen a lot of discussion around DSCSA. As I mentioned at the beginning, it was coming up so quickly, and I'm like, why is no one talking about this? This seems like really critical, really important. And then after we had announced it, sent email out and everything, then the exemption came out. So anyways, it happens. That is all that I have for today. I hope that a lot of this was really, really helpful. I do want to ask a poll. We did have a poll. I want to ask for two things. We had a poll that we were going to release related to if you felt that you were DSCSA ready, if you felt that you were prepared for DSCSA, if you feel like you are ready for it, maybe you don't understand it at all. So go ahead and go there and answer that now, because I really want to know, if we should do some more practical follow-up content on this. So that's one. So let's see what the results of that poll is. So please go and answer that poll. It is on your right-hand side in tab 2 called polls, and then you'll see the question there. Thank you. I see a lot of you are responding. It's really good to see that there's a really good number that feel they're prepared to respond to this. So that's really great. Then I want to ask you a second thing. All right. So thank you for answering the poll. We'll give a couple more seconds, and then we'll discuss the results. You all can see the results, but it looks like there's like a 60-40. Yeah, that's actually higher than I thought. So that's pretty good. So that means a lot of you are aware of what's going on and prepared. So that's great. Yep. So like 61% felt no, that they did not feel prepared, but 40% feel yes. So that's great. The second request that I have for you is, as we prepare to do these webinars every month, I feel that sometimes there are other consultant CPAs that do webinars, and I don't want to sound repetitive. I don't want to talk about the same things all the time. So what I do want to ask is, those of you that are on here, is what are some, if you could just put in the chat, what are some topics that you're interested in knowing more about? What are some, if you are a health system, if you're a grantee, if you are a contract pharmacy, etc. Believe it or not, we even have manufacturers that join our calls. We have TPAs on our calls. On our webinars, we have everyone from all parts of the 340B world on our webinar calls. But I'd love to hear from you. You can put it right in the chat. What are some topics that you wish there was more content for And that can be anything. That could be anything from how to run your contract pharmacy. It could be anything from really practical stuff on, how to look at your 340B savings and how to read that and analyze that. It can be, how to structure a contract pharmacy network in a way that that expands your opportunity. It could be how to handle referral, prescriptions, whatever. I want you to put that in the chat. Please, if you would do me that big favor, put that in the chat. Let us know what it is. We're going to then take all that information, and we're going to see if there's trends on what you all want us to be sharing and talking about, because I really want this topic to be fresh, to be unique, to be valuable to you all that are joining us on these calls and giving us of your valuable time. I don't want you to come and to feel like you're not getting good content. So please put that in the chat. I see some great stuff in there. Please share that. And what was that?
There's some great feedback here. I love the e-vouchers and how it cuts into the savings. That's a good one, Andrew. And there's some. We definitely appreciate all of that, because we want to know, like Anthony said, we need to know, or Anthony needs to know about what we want to have these webinars on. What are you guys facing? We haven't been on the CE side in forever, and so we want to know what you all are facing on a daily basis. Also, to plug, I'm not sure if I'm supposed to or not, but Anthony and I are going to start doing a podcast. Anthony, what is the frequency? Every other week?
Yeah, then we'll do twice a month. And actually, you know what, Justin, you know what we're going to do right now, real time? Let's take a poll. I want to take a poll. So Hannah, if you're still there, if you can put a poll, and to see if anyone, again, those of you that are on here, if you will be interested in a podcast that twice a week we're going to talk about the hot topics on the in the 340B space. So if those of you follow like some of the like YouTube podcasts that essentially go through like what are the hot topics in the news, that's what we're thinking about. Is like, what are the hot topics? I see a ton of you are saying things like, the Johnson & Johnson rebate model and that type of stuff, right? A lot of that has come out in the news of sort of like the letter between HRSA and Johnson & Johnson, and some of those developments move so fast that we're not able to even do a webinar on it because it just moves so fast. So I'm curious to know if you all want, will be interested in something like that. We're gonna make it super short, not anything, long, but something that you can access and that you can know, okay, what's going on in my industry? How can I be better prepared as a professional so that then you are able to, help your covered entity navigate what's going on in the 340B space, be able to speak to what's going on in Congress in terms of the bills that are in Congress. One of the interesting things that I love to do a webinar on actually is the National Clearinghouse. I don't know if some of you saw, there's a big push for marketing and webinars and all this other stuff about this National Clearinghouse. I actually have a really good backstory into all of that I would love to share, but I think that's podcast content. I want to keep this to a highly educational, once a month on sort of like, an important topic to you all. And then the podcast is more of a quick, more non-formal, hey, here's what's going on in the industry. Here are the top topics in the industry, so that and are aware. Because the truth is, you might not be subscribed to all of the emailing lists, and you might not be subscribed to 340B Report and 340B Health, and or are following the news of the 340B world that closely. So we want to provide a bridge to that so that you can go somewhere and know, okay, let me just listen to this for 15 minutes and just know what's going on in my industry, or what's going on in the 340B world at large, and what I need to know to be prepared to respond to. All right, great. Wow. I'm really flattered. I really appreciate the overwhelming response to wanting the podcast. I was kind of like 50-50 on it.
Those two no's are for you. The 88 yeses are for me, and the 11 definitely's. Because I'm uncensored on the podcast.
Is that what those two no's are another TPA probably. love everyone. Everyone, thank you for coming. I don't care who you are. This is
That's right.
intended to just be educational. So I don't care who you are. Come, sign up, keep coming to the webinars. The podcast stuff is going to come out soon. And I appreciate everyone that's still answering. Thank you so much for that overwhelming response. I really, our heart is really just to provide value to you, make sure that you leave more educated and understand more of what's going on in our space, which is changing a lot, and it's complicated and it's tricky. So we just want to help bring clarity to that and deliver that in a way that you can feel that you found value. All right. With all that said, thank you so much. Again, if you are interested in knowing more about our 340B TPA services, our referrals capture platform, our PBM services, you can contact us here. Justin himself will call you and will set something up with you if you're interested. And until next time, thank you so much. Have a great rest of your day.
Thank you all.
Yeah.